"You're a burden now," my wife said as her brothers packed my things. "I can't take care of you after your accident." They threw me out while I was still in a wheelchair. 3 months later, when they discovered what I'd been hiding, it was too late. My name is David Miller, and 3 months ago, I became the punchline to the world's cruelest joke. Picture this. I'm 40 feet up on a construction scaffold, personally testing the fall protection harnesses that my startup company designed, manufactured, and was about to ship to construction sites across the Northeast. I'm the CEO, the lead engineer, and apparently the universe's favorite target for cosmic irony. Because guess what happened? The carabiner snapped. Not ours, thank God for small mercies, but the ancient, rust-crusted anchor point that some genius contractor installed back when people thought asbestos was a gift from heaven. Down I went through the air like a very unsuccessful superhero, my life flashing before my eyes in a highlight reel that was honestly pretty disappointing. I mean, if you're going to see your life flash by, you'd hope for more exotic vacations and fewer spreadsheets. The fall itself was over in 3 seconds. The aftermath is still going strong, like the world's worst subscription service that I never asked for. I woke up in the hospital with more tubes coming out of me than a science experiment, and a neurologist with a name I couldn't pronounce telling me that my T11 and T12 vertebrae had basically decided to retire early. "Temporary paralysis from the waist down," he said with the enthusiasm of someone reading a lunch menu. 6 to 12 months of recovery, he predicted. Physical therapy, determination, positive attitude, all the greatest hits of medical optimism. My wife, Sarah, visited me exactly 3 times during my 2-week hospital stay. I counted. The first time, she cried actual tears, which I thought was touching until I realized she was calculating our diminished household income in her head while the tears fell. The second visit, she brought practical questions. What's the insurance situation? Are you still on the payroll? Did you sign anything before the accident? Very romantic stuff. By the third visit, she'd upgraded to straight-up pragmatism. We need to talk about living arrangements when you come home. Even in my medication-induced haze, I knew that phrase, "we need to talk about," was never followed by anything good. It's like, "no offense but," or "I'm not racist but," just a warning label for incoming garbage. But I was optimistic, stupidly, naively optimistic. I figured we'd been married for 8 years. We'd weathered her father's death, my mother's cancer scare, 3 failed business ventures before my safety gear company finally took off, and that time she accidentally adopted a feral cat that terrorized us for 6 months before we found a farm for it to live on. Surely a temporarily paralyzed husband was just another challenge we'd tackle together, right? I imagined us as a team, working through physical therapy appointments, making the house wheelchair accessible, maybe even coming out stronger on the other side. You see this stuff in movies all the time. Adversity bringing couples closer together, love conquering all, triumph of the human spirit, blah, blah, blah. Reality, as it turns out, doesn't give a damn about movie tropes. The morning after I came home from the hospital, still learning how to navigate doorways in my wheelchair without taking out chunks of drywall, Sarah gathered the troops. And by troops, I mean her 2 brothers, Mark and Kevin, who arrived at our house at 8 in the morning like they had an appointment, which I would soon discover they absolutely did. I was in the living room trying to figure out how to transfer myself from the wheelchair to the couch without face-planting onto the hardwood floor when the 3 of them walked in with the kind of unified purpose that made my stomach drop. It was the same energy as a corporate board walking in to fire the CEO, or a pack of velociraptors surrounding their prey. Nature documentary levels of coordinated menace. Sarah stood in front of me, arms crossed, wearing her business casual outfit, the one she wore to her bank job when she had to deliver bad news to loan applicants. Mark and Kevin flanked her like the world's least intimidating bodyguards. Mark worked in IT and had the posture of a question mark. Kevin was a cryptocurrency consultant, which I'm pretty sure is code for unemployed but owns a lot of hoodies. These were my backup, my support system, my family by marriage. David, Sarah started, and I knew immediately from her tone that she'd rehearsed this. It had that artificial smoothness, like a customer service script. We've been talking, and we think it's best if you find somewhere else to live. I actually laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. I'm sorry, what? This house has stairs, she continued, gesturing around like I hadn't lived there for 5 years and maybe hadn't noticed the architectural features. You can't get to the bedroom. You can't use the main bathroom. We can't carry you up and down forever. Forever? I repeated. It's been literally 1 day. I just got home yesterday. Mark shifted his weight. It's classic, I'm uncomfortable but committed to this terrible decision stance. Dude, it's just not practical. Sarah needs her space. We need to think about what's realistic here. Realistic? That word. Like my existence had become some kind of logistical problem they needed to solve, preferably by making me someone else's problem. I looked at Sarah, really looked at her, searching for any sign of the woman I'd married. The one who'd cried when I proposed at that cheesy Italian restaurant. The one who'd said, in sickness and in health, in front of 200 people with an open bar. Where was that, Sarah? You're a burden now, she said. And there it was, the actual truth, stripped of euphemism and rehearsed speeches. She said it like she was announcing the weather forecast. Cloudy with a chance of emotional devastation. I can't spend the next year or more being a caretaker. That's not what I signed up for. The room went quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my entire world imploding. Mark and Kevin wouldn't make eye contact. Cowards. Sarah stood there, waiting for me to accept this verdict like a good little evicted husband. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to remind her of every sacrifice I'd made. Working 70-hour weeks to build my company while she complained I wasn't home enough. Taking out a second mortgage to cover her brother's legal fees when Kevin got caught in that misunderstanding with the securities fraud. Planning elaborate anniversaries she barely acknowledged. But what would be the point? You can't logic someone into loving you. You can't guilt someone into basic human decency. So instead, I did what I always do when things get unbearable. I cracked jokes in my head. At least label the boxes fragile husband inside. This side up, dreams and dignity enclosed. Handle with care. Oh, wait, too late. Fine, I said finally, my voice surprisingly steady. How long do I have? We were thinking this weekend, Sarah said. Mark and Kevin can help you pack. Of course they could. Of course they were already assigned roles in my eviction. I wondered how long they'd been planning this. Since the accident? Since the hospital? Maybe even before, just waiting for a good enough excuse. This weekend it is, I said, spinning my wheelchair around to face the window so they couldn't see my expression. I'll be out of your way in no time. After all, I'd hate to be a burden. Behind me, I heard them shuffle away, probably relieved I hadn't made more of a scene, probably congratulating themselves on handling a difficult situation so maturely. And me? I sat there in my wheelchair, looking out at the street where kids were riding bikes and neighbors were mowing lawns, and life was continuing like nothing had changed, making a promise to myself. They thought they were throwing out the trash. They had no idea they were discarding a winning lottery ticket. But they'd find out soon enough. If you've never watched two grown men try to pack up your entire life while having the combined organizational skills of a pair of golden retrievers, let me tell you, it's an experience. Mark and Kevin showed up Saturday morning at 7:30, which was honestly impressive considering neither of them had demonstrated the ability to wake up before noon in the entire time I'd known them. They came bearing supplies. A roll of packing tape that looked like it had been stolen from a post office in 1987, one marker with a dried-out tip, and approximately 400 black garbage bags. Not moving boxes, not storage containers, garbage bags, because apparently that's what you use when you're packing up trash. And I guess that's what I was now. Yesterday's garbage, ready for the curb. "We figured this would be easier," Mark announced, holding up the bags like he'd just solved world hunger. "Boxes are expensive, man, and heavy. These babies are light, cheap, and they hold a ton." I sat in my wheelchair near the bedroom door, watching this disaster unfold in real time. "You know what else garbage bags are good for?" I asked. "Garbage, which is fitting, I guess, considering the whole situation." Kevin laughed, completely missing the point. "See, that's what I love about you, David. Still got that sense of humor." He clapped me on the shoulder like we were buddies, like he wasn't actively participating in making me homeless. The cognitive dissonance was honestly impressive. They started with my closet, which should have been a relatively straightforward task. Take clothes off hangers, fold them, pack them neatly. Except Mark and Kevin approached this like they were in a speedrun competition for world's worst movers. They grabbed entire armfuls of shirts still on hangers and just stuffed them into bags. No folding, no organizing, no separation of casual wear from work clothes. My favorite jacket, the leather one I'd saved up for 3 months to buy, got crammed in with gym shorts and old t-shirts. I watched a cashmere sweater that cost more than Kevin's car payment disappear into a bag that definitely had something sticky on the outside. "You guys know those hangers don't belong to me, right?" I said. "Those are Sarah's fancy wooden hangers, the ones she bought from that overpriced container store." Mark paused mid-stuff. "Oh, crap. Really? Really? She'll notice. She's like a hanger accountant, takes inventory monthly." They spent the next 15 minutes trying to extract hangers from garbage bags, which was like watching someone perform surgery with oven mitts. Shirts fell on the floor. A pair of dress pants somehow ended up tangled with a phone charger. It was chaos. Beautiful, stupid chaos. But the real masterpiece came when they moved to my books. I had maybe 75 books on the shelf in her bedroom. History, business, some fiction, a few technical manuals about industrial safety that definitely aren't bestsellers but are fascinating if you're into that sort of thing. I collected them over years. Some from college, some from used bookstores, a few signed copies from author events. Each one had a memory attached. Mark looked at the shelf, looked at his garbage bag, and I swear I could see the singular brain cell bouncing around his skull trying to figure out what to do. "Just toss them in," Kevin suggested. "Books are just paper. They'll be fine." "Books are not just paper, you Neanderthal," I said. "That's like saying the Mona Lisa is just paint. Show some respect, dude." "They're going in a bag either way," Mark said, already grabbing a handful. Hardcovers mixed with paperbacks, spines bent at weird angles. A signed first edition of a book about engineering failures. Oh, the irony. Got shoved in upside down next to my old physics textbook. I died a little inside with each careless toss. Then came my laptop. My beautiful, custom-built laptop with 3 years of work files, design schematics, client contacts, and roughly 7,000 browser tabs I kept meaning to organize. Kevin picked it up from my desk, didn't even close it at first, just slammed it shut and looked around for something to put it in. "That needs padding," I said quickly. "Bubble wrap, a laptop case, literally anything protective." "It'll be fine," Kevin said, wrapping it in a t-shirt and dropping it into a garbage bag with my shoes. My shoes? The ones I couldn't even wear anymore but kept for sentimental reasons, and also because I was in denial about my legs. See? I made a mental note to check that laptop immediately upon arrival at wherever I was going, because I guaranteed the screen would be cracked. But honestly, what was I gonna do? Wheel over there and physically stop them? I tried that earlier when they were packing my kitchen stuff, and I'd nearly gotten knocked over when Mark turned around with an armful of plates. "Careful, bro," he'd said, like I was the hazard in this situation. My guitar, a Martin acoustic I'd bought 10 years ago when I briefly believed I could become the next indie folk sensation, got special treatment. By which I mean Kevin carried it by the neck like a baseball bat and leaned it against the wall near a garbage bag full of God knows what. I watched the headstock wobble dangerously close to the doorframe and considered just letting it fall. Maybe the sound of wood splintering would match my internal screaming. "We can't carry you up and down the stairs forever," Sarah had said the day before, and now here was the follow-through. Never mind that I'd asked exactly once for help getting upstairs, and that was literally the first day home from the hospital. Never mind that I'd already started researching stair lifts and accessibility modifications. Never mind that forever apparently meant less than 48 hours before we give up entirely. But sure, Sarah, sure. The stairs were the real problem here. By noon, they'd accumulated what looked like a crime scene. Black garbage bags everywhere, some tied, some not, contents unknown and probably jumbled beyond recognition. My life reduced to what appeared to be evidence disposal. Mark stood in the middle of it all, hands on his hips, surveying their work with unearned pride. "That wasn't so bad," he declared. "Probably got everything, right?" "Everything except my dignity," I muttered. "But that left the building 2 days ago." Kevin snorted. "You're hilarious, man. I'm gonna miss having you around." The thing was, he seemed genuine. Like he actually would miss me. Like he hadn't just spent 4 hours treating my possessions like landfill material. The cognitive dissonance was giving me whiplash. These guys existed in a reality where you could participate in someone's eviction and still consider yourself the good guy. It was impressive, really. The mental gymnastics required for that level of self-deception could win Olympic gold. "So where are we taking this stuff?" Mark asked, gesturing at Mount Garbage Bag. "Good question." Sarah had asked me the same thing that morning with the kind of fake concern that made me want to throw something. "Do you have somewhere to go?" she'd asked. "Because obviously you can't stay here, but we want to make sure you land somewhere safe." How thoughtful, how considerate, how completely full of it. Out loud, I'd said, "Don't worry about it. I've got it handled." The truth? I absolutely had it handled, but they didn't need to know that yet. "There's a storage unit downtown," I lied smoothly, "and I've got a temporary place lined up. Just need you guys to load everything into whatever vehicle shows up." "What kind of vehicle?" Kevin asked suspiciously. I checked my phone, pulling up the app I'd used the night before. "Should be here in about 30 minutes. Black van, wheelchair accessible, professional moving service." Mark's eyebrows shot up. "Moving service? Dude, those are expensive." "Yeah, well," I said, wheeling toward the living room where more garbage bags awaited. "I figured if I'm being thrown out, I might as well leave in style. Think of it as my parting gift to myself, a ride that doesn't treat me like trash, unlike some people I could mention." But I kept that last part internal, savoring it like a good wine. Because here's what Mark and Kevin didn't know, what Sarah didn't know, what nobody in this house had bothered to ask about during my hospital stay. I wasn't broke. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't the burden they'd convinced themselves I was. I was something much worse for them. I was free. And in about 30 minutes, they were going to get their first hint that maybe, just maybe, they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. I couldn't wait. Here's what Sarah, Mark, and pretty much everyone else in my life didn't know. While I was lying in that hospital bed for 2 weeks, pumped full of painkillers and contemplating my newly uncertain future, I wasn't just recovering from a catastrophic fall. I was closing the deal of a lifetime. Because apparently nothing says perfect timing like negotiating a multi-million-dollar acquisition while your vertebrae are still deciding whether or not they want to be friends again. Let me back up. My company, Secure Fall Innovations, yes, I know the irony is not lost on me, had been on the radar of Titan Shield Industries for about 18 months. Titan Shield is one of those massive engineering conglomerates that you've never heard of, but that literally builds half the infrastructure in North America. Bridges, tunnels, skyscrapers, the works. And they'd been watching my little startup because we developed a fall protection harness system that was genuinely revolutionary. Lighter, stronger, smarter than anything on the market. We had sensors that could predict equipment failure before it happened, materials that could withstand impacts that would turn regular harnesses into confetti, and a price point that made us competitive with the garbage equipment most companies were using. Titan Shield had been circling for months, sending their corporate development people to our offices, asking pointed questions, making those just curious inquiries that actually mean we're calculating how much you're worth. My CFO, Janet, who's basically a financial shark in a pantsuit, had been managing the conversations, keeping them interested but not desperate. Playing hard to get, corporate edition. Then I fell off a building. Or rather, off a scaffold attached to a building. But let's not split hairs. You'd think that would kill the deal, right? CEO has catastrophic accident, company loses its visionary leader, acquisition talks die on the vine? That's what I thought too, lying there in the ICU, mentally writing the obituary for my business dreams. But here's the thing about corporate giants. They don't care about your personal drama. They care about intellectual property, market share, and profit margins, and Secure Fall had all three in spades. 3 days after my surgery, while I was still figuring out how to use a bedpan without wanting to die from embarrassment, Janet video called me. "They want to accelerate," she said, her face pixelated on my hospital room TV that doubled as a monitor. "The accident actually made them more interested, proves the market need, shows that even the experts aren't safe with current equipment." "That's the most capitalist thing I've ever heard," I replied, my voice slurred from medication. My spine explodes, and their response is, "Great marketing opportunity?" "Welcome to American business, baby," Janet said. "So, do you want to hear the offer or not?" The offer was staggering. $8.5 million, with performance bonuses that could push it over $10 million if we hit certain milestones in the first year post-acquisition. They'd keep the team intact, maintain the brand, and offer me a position as Director of Safety Innovation with a salary that made my previous CEO compensation look like allowance money. The only catch? They wanted to close fast. Sign the papers, transfer the assets, announce the deal, all within 6 weeks. "They're worried you might die," Janet explained bluntly. "No offense, but if you kick it before the ink is dry, the whole deal gets complicated. Estate lawyers, probate, your wife inheriting everything. They want this locked down while you're still alive and lucid." "I'm not dying," I said. "The doctors were very clear. Paralysis is temporary. I'm already getting sensation back." "Great. Tell that to the lawyers. In the meantime, should I tell them yes?" I thought about it for approximately 3 seconds. My company, my baby, my 5-year obsession, being absorbed into a corporate behemoth. It should have felt like surrender, like selling out. But you know what? It actually felt like freedom. Because I'd built Secure Fall with my own money, my own credit, and one significant loan from Sarah's trust fund that she reminded me about roughly once a week. If I sold now, I could pay her back triple and never owe her anything ever again. "Tell them yes," I said. "Let's do this." The next 4 weeks were a blur of video conferences from my hospital bed, digital signatures, lawyer consultations, and NDAs thicker than the Bible. Sarah visited during some of these meetings. Remember, this was during her brief concerned wife phase before she evolved into "you're a burden" mode. But I always muted the microphone and turned off the camera when she was around. "Just checking emails," I'd tell her. "Work stuff, nothing important." She never asked for details, never questioned why I was spending so much time on my laptop when I was supposed to be resting. She was too busy on her phone, probably texting Mark and Kevin about how difficult this all was for her. Poor Sarah, saddled with a temporarily disabled husband. How would she cope? How would she survive this trial? Narrator voice. She wouldn't have to. The deal closed on a Wednesday, exactly 1 week before I was discharged from the hospital. $8.5 million hit my business account, then immediately got redistributed according to the plan Janet and I had worked out.
pay off all company debts, give generous bonuses to our 12 employees, set up a trust for ongoing operations, pay back Sarah's trust fund loan with interest, and put a very comfortable chunk into my personal accounts. Accounts that Sarah didn't have access to because I'd opened them during my bachelor days and never gotten around to making them joint accounts. Funny how procrastination sometimes saves your life.
I also did something else, something that seemed crazy at the time but makes perfect sense now. I rented a penthouse downtown in one of those luxury buildings that looks like it was designed by someone who watched too much science fiction. 23rd floor, 2-bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows. And this is the important part. Completely, totally, impossibly accessible. The building had been designed with universal accessibility in mind, which apparently is a thing now in high-end real estate. Wide doorways, roll-in showers, adjustable countertops, voice-controlled everything. It was like someone had built a penthouse specifically for a wealthy disabled person, and I qualified on both counts. Now, I rented it under my holding company's name, Miller Enterprises LLC, a shell corporation I'd set up years ago for tax purposes, with a 2-year lease paid in full. The property management company never met me, never saw my wheelchair, never knew anything except that the money cleared and their new tenant wanted to move in immediately upon discharge from the hospital. "Why are you doing this?" Janet asked when I told her about the apartment. "You have a house, you have a wife, you could use that money for medical expenses, accessibility modifications, actual smart things." "Call it a backup plan," I said, "a safety net. You literally design safety nets for a living." "Exactly. I know their value." She didn't push it, which is why Janet is the best. She just processed the payment and kept her thoughts to herself. But I could see her brain working. Calculating, probably figuring out what I already knew. My marriage was circling the drain. You don't rent a luxury penthouse as a backup plan unless you're pretty sure you're going to need it. The apartment was ready 2 days before I got discharged. I had it furnished through an online service. Minimalist, modern, expensive bed that could adjust to any position, couch that was the perfect height for wheelchair transfers, kitchen that looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest. I even splurged on an art for the walls, because if I was going to get kicked out of my own house, I was at least going to land somewhere that didn't look like a hospital room extension. Sarah drove me home from the hospital, complaining the entire time about traffic, the parking garage fees, how the hospital wheelchair attendant had been rude to her. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city go by, thinking about my secret apartment waiting for me downtown, my secret bank accounts, my secret new job title that wouldn't be announced for another month. I felt like a superhero with a secret identity. Mild-mannered disabled husband by day, secretly wealthy director of innovation by night. Except, actually disabled and not fighting crime. But the secret identity part was accurate. When she announced 3 days later that I needed to leave, that I was a burden, that Mark and Kevin would help me pack, I almost laughed. Almost told her right then about the money, the apartment, the deal. But something stopped me. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was strategic thinking. Maybe it was just the petty satisfaction of knowing that she thought she was throwing away trash when she was actually discarding treasure. So I played along, acted defeated, let them pack my life into garbage bags, watched them fumble through my belongings like they were cleaning out a storage unit, and the whole time I was thinking about my penthouse with the skyline view, my bank account with more commas than Sarah had ever seen, and my new job title that would make her choke on her morning coffee when she found out. They thought they were getting rid of a burden. They had no idea they were evicting their meal ticket, their safety net, and their biggest mistake, all rolled into one wheelchair-using package. But they'd figure it out soon enough. Very, very soon. Sarah expected a taxi, maybe an Uber if I was feeling fancy. She'd probably pictured some beat-up sedan pulling up to the curb, a driver helping me awkwardly transfer from my wheelchair while neighbors watched from their windows. The whole scene radiating fallen on hard times energy. It would fit the narrative she'd been building in her head. Tragic accident, unfortunate circumstances, difficult decisions. We tried our best, but sometimes love isn't enough.
Very Lifetime movie channel. Very, we're the victims here, too. What she got instead was something else entirely. At exactly 1 o'clock, as Mark and Kevin were loading the last of my garbage bag possessions onto the front porch like they were setting out trash for collection day, a vehicle turned onto our street. Not a taxi, not an Uber. A gleaming black Mercedes Sprinter van, the kind that costs more than most people's cars, with tinted windows and a hydraulic wheelchair lift that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. It pulled up to our curb with the kind of smooth, expensive silence that only German engineering can produce. The driver stepped out, wearing an actual suit. Not a polo shirt, not a hoodie, but a legitimate three-piece suit, like he was driving dignitaries to the UN. He was maybe 50, salt and pepper hair, the kind of professional bearing that suggested he'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing. He walked up our driveway, past Mark, who was frozen mid-garbage bag carry, and approached me with a slight nod. "Mr. Miller," he asked, his voice carrying the kind of calm professionalism that makes you feel like everything is under control, even when your life is literally packed in trash bags. "That's me," I said, trying not to smile too obviously. "I'm Robert. I'll be handling your transportation today. Shall we begin loading your belongings?" Sarah had appeared on the porch, her phone in hand, probably mid-text about what a difficult morning this had been. She looked at the van, then at Robert, then at me, her expression cycling through confusion, surprise, and something that might have been the first inkling that she'd miscalculated something. "What is this?" she asked. "This," I said, gesturing at the van like I was presenting a game show prize, "is my ride. Pretty sweet, right?" Mark had set down his garbage bag and was circling the van like a kid at a car show, peering at the windows, checking out the wheelchair lift. "Dude, is this like a medical transport?" "It's a private mobility service," Robert corrected smoothly, already moving toward the pile of my belongings. "We specialize in accessible luxury transportation. Mr. Miller has contracted us for the afternoon." He picked up 2 garbage bags with the kind of dignified efficiency that suggested he'd handled far stranger cargo than my hastily packed life. Kevin wandered over, clearly impressed despite himself. "How much does something like this cost?" Robert smiled politely, the kind of smile that says, "I'm not discussing finances with you," and continued loading bags into the van with a grace that made Mark and Kevin's earlier packing job look even more pathetic in comparison. "I didn't even know you knew how to order Uber XL," Mark muttered, watching Robert work. I rolled closer to the van, enjoying this more than I probably should have. "Oh, this isn't Uber XL. This is Elite Transport Incorporated, specializing in fast exits from bad marriages. 5 stars on Yelp. Highly recommend their Dignity Restoration Package." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She'd developed this expression over the years, the one that said she was doing mental math and not liking the results. "David, how are you paying for this?" "Does it matter?" I asked. "You're getting what you wanted. I'm leaving. The method of departure shouldn't concern you." "It concerns me if you're spending money we don't have on vanity transport when you should be saving for medical expenses." The audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of this woman, who was literally evicting me from our house, who'd called me a burden less than 48 hours ago, now suddenly concerned about my financial decisions? I could feel the sarcasm building up like pressure in a shaken soda bottle. "First of all," I said, keeping my voice level, "there is no we anymore. You made that pretty clear. Second, my medical expenses are covered by insurance, which you'd know if you'd asked literally anything about my situation beyond when can we get rid of you. And third," I gestured at Robert, who was now carefully securing my garbage bags with actual tie-down straps like my stuff mattered, "I'm an adult with my own bank account. I can order whatever transportation I want." Mark cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden tension. "So, where exactly are you going? You never actually said." "Downtown," I replied, which was true but spectacularly incomplete. "Got a place lined up. Fully accessible, view of the city. Very nice."
Like an assisted living facility? Kevin asked, and I couldn't tell if he was being deliberately obtuse or if that was just his natural state. Sure, I said. Let's go with that. Assisted living, that's exactly what it is. Robert had finished loading everything, somehow making the pile of garbage bags look almost organized in the van's cargo area, and was now extending the wheelchair lift. It unfolded with a smooth mechanical whir, like a transformer deciding to become a ramp. He locked it in place, tested it twice, then nodded at me. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Miller." I rolled toward the lift, then paused and turned back to look at Sarah, Mark, and Kevin standing in front of the house. My house? Well, our house. Well, her house now, I guess. The place where I'd lived for 5 years, where I'd celebrated promotions and mourned failures, where I'd believed I was building a life. It looked smaller now, shabbier. Or maybe that was just my perspective changing. "Thanks for everything," I said, and I didn't even try to hide the sarcasm. "Really, you've taught me so much about family loyalty and the importance of reading the fine print on marriage vows. Turns out in sickness and in health has an asterisk that says, unless the sickness is inconvenient." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, probably to deliver some rehearsed line about how this was hard for everyone or how I was being unfair, but I was already rolling onto the lift. Robert pressed a button, and the hydraulic system engaged, lifting me smoothly up to the van's floor level. It was the smoothest, most dignified ascent I'd experienced since the accident. Take that front porch stairs that Sarah said were too difficult to navigate. The interior of the van was absurd. Leather captain's chairs, climate control, ambient lighting, and enough space to park 2 wheelchairs comfortably. My chair locked into a securing system that was somehow both high-tech and elegant. Robert made sure I was properly secured, handed me a bottle of water from a mini-fridge, because of course there was a mini-fridge, and closed the door. Through the tinted window, I could see Sarah, Mark, and Kevin still standing there, looking confused and slightly concerned, like they just watched a magic trick they couldn't explain. Sarah had her arms crossed, her phone dangling from one hand. Mark was scratching his head. Kevin just looked impressed by the van, because Kevin had the attention span of a goldfish and the priorities to match. Robert slid into the driver's seat, adjusted his mirrors, and glanced back at me. "All set, Mr. Miller?" "All set," I confirmed. "Let's get out of here before they realize they should be asking more questions." He chuckled, actually chuckled, and started the engine. It purred to life with that expensive car sound that's somehow both powerful and whisper quiet. We pulled away from the curb smoothly. No jerking, no sudden movements, just pure German engineering doing its thing. I watched the house shrink in the side mirror. Watched Sarah finally pull out her phone, probably to start texting her friends about the weird van and my suspicious behavior. Watched Mark and Kevin head back inside, probably to raid my former beer fridge. Watched my old life disappear behind us as we turned the corner. "First time leaving after a separation?" Robert asked, his eyes on the road but his tone understanding. "That obvious?" "I've driven this route before. Different people, same situation. You're handling it better than most." "Yeah, well," I said, settling back into my chair and taking a sip of the fancy water that probably cost more per bottle than my old coffee budget. "It's easier to handle when you've got a plan." "I suspect you've got more than a plan, Mr. Miller," Robert said, and there was something in his voice, approval, maybe, or recognition. "I've got a few tricks up my sleeve," I admitted, "but they don't know that yet. They will soon enough." "Yeah," I said, watching the downtown skyline come into view through the windshield, glass towers reflecting the afternoon sun. "Yeah, they will." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the van eating up miles between my old life and my new one. Robert navigated traffic with the skill of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. I watched the city pass by, the neighborhoods getting nicer, the buildings getting taller, the people on the sidewalks looking more expensive. "We're approaching your building, Mr. Miller," Robert announced, as we turned onto a tree-lined street where every car cost more than I used to make in a year. The Meridian Tower, correct? That's the one, I said, sitting up straighter. Through the windshield, I could see it. All 35 stories of glass and steel, the kind of building that made you feel rich just by existing near it. Robert pulled into the circular driveway where a doorman in an actual uniform was already approaching. "Welcome home, Mr. Miller," Robert said as he put the van in park. Home. The word hit different now. Not the house I just left, not the place I'd shared with Sarah, but this tower, this penthouse, this completely unknown future that I'd bought and paid for with my own damn money. "Thanks, Robert," I said. Seriously, this was perfect. "My pleasure, sir. I'll have your belongings brought up within the hour." As the door opened and the lift deployed and the doorman greeted me by name, my actual name, which meant the building management had briefed the staff, I felt something shift. Not just location, but identity. I wasn't the guy being thrown out anymore. I was the guy who'd landed on his feet. Well, metaphorically speaking. My new apartment wasn't just accessible. It was smarter than Mark and Kevin combined, which admittedly wasn't a high bar to clear. The kitchen counters adjusted height with the press of a button, rising and lowering like something out of a sci-fi movie. The bathroom had a shower you could roll directly into, with a bench seat and controls that responded to voice commands. Shower start, temperature 102 degrees. Boom. Perfect hot water. No fumbling with knobs, no awkward transfers. Even the lighting was voice-controlled. Lights, 50%. And the whole place would dim to whatever ambience I wanted. It was like living in the Starship Enterprise, if the Enterprise had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown and a monthly rent that could finance a small car. The balcony was my favorite part. 23rd floor, wrap-around view of the city skyline, accessible through doors wide enough to accommodate my wheelchair with room to spare. I'd roll out there in the mornings with my coffee, fancy stuff from the cafe downstairs, none of that grocery store swill I used to drink, and watch the city wake up. Tiny people rushing to their tiny jobs, dealing with their tiny problems, while I sat up here like some kind of disabled Tony Stark, plotting my next move. But the best feature wasn't the smart home tech or the view, or even the fact that my bedroom had a bed that could transform into basically a hospital bed if I needed it. No, the best feature was that it was mine. Paid for by me, furnished by me, occupied by me. No Sarah nagging about dishes in the sink. No Mark just crashing for a few days that turned into 3 weeks. No Kevin asking to borrow money for his latest cryptocurrency scheme. Just me, my wheelchair, and enough square footage to do donuts if I wanted, which I did once, don't judge. The rehab center was 4 blocks away, close enough that I could get there easily, far enough that I could pretend I was going on an adventure. 3 times a week, I'd wheel myself down the pristine sidewalks of downtown's fancy district, past boutiques I'd never shop in, and restaurants with prices that made my old budget weep, to a medical building that specialized in spinal injury rehabilitation. Dr. Evans ran the program, and she was exactly the kind of person you want in charge of putting your spine back together. Competent, no nonsense, and completely immune to self-pity. First day, she looked at my chart, looked at me, and said, T11, T12, incomplete injury, regaining sensation, good prognosis. You'll walk again if you do the work. Question is, will you do the work? Is that a challenge? I'd asked. It's a fact. I've got patients who are here twice a week, going through the motions, complaining the whole time. They make minimal progress. Then I've got patients who treat this like a job, show up angry, and channel that anger into every rep. They recover faster. Which type are you? I thought about Sarah's face when she'd called me a burden, about Mark and Kevin stuffing my life into garbage bags, about the house I'd paid for becoming a place I wasn't welcome. I'm definitely the angry type, I'd said. She'd smiled. Good. Anger is excellent fuel. Let's put it to use. And we did. Oh boy, did we ever. Physical therapy, it turns out, is basically like going to the gym, except everything hurts more, and the exercises have names like pelvic tilt and glute bridge that sound like yoga positions designed by sadists. There were parallel bars for practicing standing. There were resistance bands for rebuilding muscle. There were balance exercises that made me feel like a toddler learning to walk, which was frustrating and humbling and exactly the kind of challenge that made me push harder. "David, you're progressing faster than any patient I've had," Dr. Evans told me after my third week. We were in the standing frame, this contraption that basically holds you upright while your legs remember what vertical is supposed to feel like. I'd graduated from 5-minute sessions to 20 minutes, and my legs were screaming, but in that good way that meant nerves were reconnecting, muscles were rebuilding, things were happening. "I'm highly motivated," I said through gritted teeth. "I can see that. What's motivating you?" "Family support, career goals, spite," I said honestly. "Pure, unfiltered spite. Also, revenge. Revenge is a great motivator." She laughed. "Well, whatever works. Just don't hurt yourself proving a point." But that was the thing. I couldn't hurt myself, not any more than I already had been. The fall had been rock bottom. Everything since then was climbing up, one painful rep at a time. And every time the burn hit, every time my muscles screamed and my brain said, maybe that's enough for today, I'd picture Sarah's face, her dismissive expression, her casual cruelty. "You're a burden now." And I'd do one more rep, then another, then another. I called them revenge reps. Every bicep curl was for the time Sarah told her mother I was difficult to manage, like I was a problematic pet. Every leg press was for Mark's comment about how they couldn't carry me forever after helping exactly once. Every core exercise was for Kevin asking if I'd thought about just staying positive, like positive thinking could regenerate nerve tissue. Each rep was a middle finger to everyone who'd written me off. The other patients noticed. There was Gary, a 50-something guy who'd been in a motorcycle accident and had a similar injury to mine. He'd been in rehab for 8 months and had plateaued, content with using his wheelchair full-time. There was Michelle, a young woman who'd been injured in a car accident and was making steady but slow progress. There was Tom, an older guy who treated rehab like a social club, more interested in chatting than working. And then there was me, the angry guy in the corner who showed up 30 minutes early to do extra warm-ups and stayed late to squeeze in additional exercises. The guy who asked Dr. Evans for homework assignments, actual physical therapy homework, so I could keep working between sessions. "Dude, you're making us all look bad," Gary joked one day as I was doing my third set of seated rows while he was taking a water break from his first set. "Good," I said, not joking at all. "Maybe that'll motivate you." "What's your hurry, man? We're all in the same boat here." "No," I said, setting down the resistance band and wiping sweat from my forehead. "We're really not. You're accepting this as your new normal. I'm treating it as a temporary setback. Big difference." He looked offended for about 3 seconds, then thoughtful. The next session, he showed up 20 minutes early and asked Dr. Evans to increase his weights. Spite. It's contagious. My apartment building had a gym on the 10th floor, residents only, equipped with everything from treadmills to weight machines to a pool that was kept at exactly 84 degrees for therapeutic purposes. I started going there on my off days from rehab, working on upper body strength, core stability, anything that would speed up my recovery. The gym was usually empty in the mornings, which was perfect. Just me, my wheelchair, a bench press, and an increasingly impressive collection of angry thoughts to power through. I transferred from wheelchair to weight bench so many times that I could do it smoothly now. No awkward fumbling, no fear of falling. I'd learned which machines were accessible and which ones required modifications. I'd figured out that the pool was actually amazing for leg exercises because the water supported my weight while my muscles relearned their job. And slowly, week by week, session by session, revenge rep by revenge rep, things changed. Sensation that had been vague and fuzzy became clearer, more specific. Toes I couldn't wiggle started responding. Muscles that had been dormant started firing. I graduated from the standing frame to standing independently with parallel bars, then to taking steps. Awkward, shaky, baby giraffe steps, but steps. "This is remarkable progress," Dr. Evans said during my 8th week. I just walked 6 feet between the parallel bars without stopping, without my legs giving out. 6 feet. It was pathetic by normal human standards and absolutely incredible by guy who couldn't feel his legs 2 months ago standards. "When can I ditch the wheelchair?" I asked. "Don't rush it. The wheelchair is a tool, not a prison. You'll probably need it for months still, especially for longer distances. But for short distances with a walker or crutches, maybe another month if you keep progressing like this." Another month. I could do another month. I'd already done 2. What was one more? Especially when every day brought me closer to the moment when I could walk back into Sarah's life. Literally walk and show her exactly what she'd thrown away. At night, after rehab and gym sessions and enough physical exertion to make every muscle in my body hate me, I'd sit on my balcony with a protein shake, because Dr. Evans had me on this whole nutrition plan too, and look out at the city. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably telling her friends about her difficult situation, about how hard it had been to make the tough decision, about how she hoped I was managing okay in whatever assisted living facility she thought I'd ended up in. She had no idea I was living in a penthouse that cost more per month than our old mortgage. She had no idea I was regaining function faster than anyone expected. She had no idea that every revenge rep, every spite-fueled exercise, every "I'll show them" moment was building towards something she couldn't imagine. My phone would buzz occasionally with texts from old friends. "Hey man, heard about the separation. You doing okay?" I'd respond with vague reassurances. "Yeah, staying with family for now, focusing on recovery." Let them think what they wanted. Let Sarah's narrative spread. Let everyone believe I was the tragic victim in this story. They'd learn the truth soon enough, but not yet. Not until I was ready. I had a press release scheduled for next month, a TV interview lined up, a whole PR campaign ready to launch that would introduce me as Titan Shield's new Director of Safety Innovation, the guy who turned a catastrophic accident into a multi-million-dollar success story. Sarah thought she'd kicked out the trash. She'd actually thrown away the trophy. And in about 4 weeks, the trophy was going to show up on national television, walking with a cane, wearing a custom suit, and explaining how temporary setbacks can lead to permanent success. I couldn't wait to see her face. But first, more revenge reps. Dr. Evans wanted me doing leg presses this afternoon, and I had a lot of spite to work through. Time to get back to work. Weeks passed in my new life, and my phone stayed suspiciously quiet. Not a single text from Sarah asking how I was doing, no calls from Mark or Kevin checking if I'd landed somewhere safe. Radio silence. Complete and total radio silence. It was like I'd been erased from their lives with the same casual efficiency they'd used to pack my stuff into garbage bags. Out of sight, out of mind. Problem solved. At first, it stung a little, not gonna lie. 8 years of marriage, 5 years of knowing her brothers, holidays together, inside jokes, shared history, all of it apparently worth exactly nothing once I became inconvenient. But then the sting faded and got replaced by something better. Curiosity. What story were they telling? How were they spinning this? Because I knew Sarah, and Sarah was nothing if not image conscious. She wouldn't just admit to kicking out her temporarily paralyzed husband. That would make her look bad. No, she'd have crafted a narrative, something that made her look sympathetic, maybe even noble. Enter Linda. Linda was my neighbor, well, my old neighbor from the house. She lived 3 doors down, was in her 60s, had absolutely zero filter, and had never particularly liked Sarah. "That woman has the warmth of a parking meter," she told me once at a block party. pretty to look at, expensive to maintain, and only accepts payment. I'd laughed it off at the time because, that was my wife she was talking about, but Linda had called it. She'd absolutely called it. 2 weeks after I moved out, Linda tracked down my number. Don't ask me how. The woman had intelligence-gathering skills that would make the CIA jealous, and called me. "David, it's Linda from Maple Street. Don't hang up." "Why would I hang up?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Because you might think I'm calling to be nosy, which I am, but I'm also calling because you need to know what's being said about you." I settled deeper into my fancy apartment couch. Oh, this should be good. What's the official story? "Sarah's telling everyone you're resting at a special facility." I could hear the air quotes in her voice. "Very vague, very mysterious. She makes it sound like you're at some fancy rehabilitation resort getting top-tier care, really focusing on your recovery. She's positioning herself as the supportive wife who made the difficult decision to let you get professional help because she wanted what was best for you." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. A special facility? That's rich. Does this special facility have a 23rd floor view and voice-controlled lighting? "You're not in a facility, are you?" "Nope. I'm in a penthouse downtown, living my best life. Doing great, actually." "I knew it." Linda sounded delighted. "I told Harold," that's my husband, I said, "Harold, something doesn't add up. David isn't the type to just disappear into some facility." But everyone's buying Sarah's story. She's getting sympathy points left and right. Oh, poor Sarah. Such a hard decision. She's so brave. He's so lucky to have her support. More air quotes. It's nauseating. What else is she saying? Well, apparently Mark got promoted at work, which we both know is code for they gave him a new title with no pay raise, and they're planning a big backyard barbecue to celebrate this Sunday. Whole neighborhood's invited. I got an invitation yesterday. Very fancy cardstock, probably cost more than it should. A barbecue, of course. Nothing says we're good people like a neighborhood barbecue where you can control the narrative while serving overpriced hamburgers. I could picture it perfectly. Sarah playing hostess, Mark accepting congratulations for his meaningless promotion, Kevin manning the grill and probably burning everything. All of them casually mentioning how David is doing so well at his facility while avoiding any actual details. Are you going? Oh, I'm absolutely going. Someone needs to be there to watch this performance. Plus, the invitation said they're serving salmon, and I'm not passing up free salmon just because the hosts are morally bankrupt. Fair point. Keep me updated. Marcus, I'm gonna give you a play-by-play so detailed you'll feel like you're there. Which you're not because you're at a special facility. True to her word, Linda became my spy in enemy territory. She'd text me updates throughout the week leading up to the barbecue. Apparently, Sarah had gone full Martha Stewart mode, ordering special decorations, hiring a professional to deep clean the house, even getting the lawn professionally manicured. Mark's promotion had become this whole production, like he'd been elected president instead of just getting a new email signature. "She's really selling it," Linda texted Wednesday evening. "New patio furniture, string lights, the works. This barbecue has a budget that could feed a small country." Thursday, ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She asked how I was doing with such fake concern I almost laughed. Then she mentioned, "If you hear from David, let him know we're thinking of him." Like I'm your carrier pigeon. Friday, the catering truck just showed up. Catering truck for a backyard barbecue. Who are these people? I sat in my apartment watching these updates roll in, feeling like I was watching a reality show about my own life. It was surreal. They were throwing a party at the house I'd paid for. celebrating a promotion at a job I'd helped Mark get through my professional connections, all while maintaining the fiction that I was peacefully recovering somewhere far away. The temptation to crash the barbecue was overwhelming. Just roll up in my wheelchair, smile, wave, and watch the narrative collapse in real time. But no, that would be satisfying for about 30 seconds. And then what? They'd scramble, make excuses, probably paint me as the bad guy for making a scene. No. If I was going to make an entrance back into their lives, it needed to be bigger than a backyard barbecue ambush. Saturday morning, Linda sent me a photo. The backyard setup taken from her upper window with what I can only assume was a telephoto lens because the detail was incredible. String lights crisscrossed over the patio, a banner that said, "Congratulations, Mark," in letters big enough to see from space. Tables with fancy tablecloths, a bar setup that looked semi-professional. It was like they were hosting a wedding reception for mediocrity. "This is insane," I texted back. "Wait till you see tomorrow. I'm bringing my good camera for posterity." Sunday arrived, and I spent the morning at rehab doing my revenge reps with extra intensity because I knew what was happening across town. Dr. Evans noticed my increased aggression. "Something on your mind today?" she asked as I powered through leg presses like I was trying to move a mountain. "Just thinking about people who underestimated me." "Well, whatever you're thinking about, it's working. You just did twice your usual reps." By afternoon, I was back at my apartment, showered, sitting on my balcony with my phone, waiting for Linda's intel. The first text came at 2:47 p.m., right when the barbecue was supposed to start. "It's begun. At least 40 people here. Sarah's wearing white pants. White to a barbecue. That's a power move."
2:53 p.m. Mark's giving a speech about his promotion, which apparently involved taking on new responsibilities and stepping up as a team leader. I'm pretty sure he just got a new desk. 3:15 p.m. Someone just asked about you. Sarah got this pained expression and said, "You're doing remarkably well considering." Considering what? She didn't elaborate. Very mysterious. 3:42 p.m. Kevin is drunk. It's not even 4 o'clock. 4:18 p.m. The salmon is dry. This is what she gets for pretending to be fancy. I was laughing at that last text when another one came through. This one longer. Okay, so Brenda Morrison, you know her, lives on the corner, just asked Sarah directly when you'd be back. And Sarah said, and I quote, "David needs to focus on his recovery right now. We're giving him space to heal without any pressure. It's what he needs." Then she did this sad smile thing like she's the hero in a Hallmark movie. I nearly threw my salmon at her. Space to heal? Right. Because kicking me out and packing my stuff in garbage bags was such a healing gesture. The reframing was actually impressive in its audacity. She'd taken "we threw him out because he was inconvenient" and transformed it into "we're nobly sacrificing our desire to have him home because we care so much about his recovery." It was a masterclass in spin. More texts rolled in throughout the afternoon. Stories about how people were praising Sarah's strength, how Mark was basking in attention for his meaningless promotion, how Kevin had indeed gotten drunk and was now telling anyone who'd listen about his cryptocurrency investments, which everyone was politely ignoring. The last text came at 6:32 p.m. Barbecue's winding down. Final assessment? Sarah successfully maintained her narrative. Everyone thinks she's a saint, and you're convalescing peacefully somewhere. Mark got a fancy watch as a congratulations gift from his parents. Kevin passed out in a lawn chair. The salmon was still dry. I'm going home. This was exhausting. "Thanks for the intel," I texted back. "Seriously, this was weirdly therapeutic." "Anytime. When are you going to blow up their little fantasy world?" "Soon," I typed. "Very soon." I set my phone down and rolled to the edge of my balcony, looking out at the city lights starting to twinkle as the sun set. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably cleaning up from her barbecue, satisfied with her performance, comfortable in her narrative. Mark was probably admiring his new watch. Kevin was probably still passed out. They had no idea what was coming. My PR team had scheduled the press release for next Sunday, exactly 1 week away. The timing had been strategic. Big enough gap after the acquisition closed that all the legal stuff was finalized, but close enough that the momentum was still there. The press release would go out Sunday morning, hit all the major business news sites by noon, and trend on social media by evening. And I'd scheduled my Good Morning America appearance for the Monday after that. Prime time, millions of viewers, national exposure.
1 week. They had one more week of their comfortable narrative, their sympathetic story, their version of events where they were the good guys making tough choices. Then reality would hit like a freight train. I pulled out my phone and texted Janet, "We still good for the press release next Sunday?" Her response came back immediately. "Locked and loaded. It's going to be spectacular. The photos turned out amazing. You look like a CEO superhero." "Perfect," I texted. "Let's make some noise." I allowed myself a moment of petty satisfaction, imagining next Sunday. Sarah probably sleeping in after whatever Saturday night plans she had. Waking up to text messages. Friends sending links. "Is this your David?" The press release photo. Me in a custom suit, sitting in my wheelchair in the Titan Shield boardroom, looking confident and successful and very much not at a special facility. The barbecue narrative was cute, impressive even. But my counter-narrative was about to be legendary. 1 more week of physical therapy. 1 more week of revenge reps. 1 more week of building strength, both physical and strategic. And then the world would learn that the guy they'd thrown away was actually the prize they lost. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. The week leading up to the press release felt like Christmas Eve when you're 8 years old, and you know there's a bike waiting for you under the tree. Except instead of a bike, I had a carefully crafted public announcement that was about to detonate Sarah's entire narrative like a controlled explosion. And I wasn't 8. I was a grown man with a vendetta and a PR team that knew exactly what they were doing. Janet called me Wednesday to go over final details. "We're releasing Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern," she said, all business. "That hits the early news cycle, catches people checking their phones over coffee, and gives it all day to spread. By Monday morning, it'll be everywhere." "And the photo made it through legal?" I asked. The photo was crucial. Me in my wheelchair, custom charcoal suit, signing the contract at the Titan Shield boardroom table. Professional, powerful, and very obviously not wasting away in some vague special facility. Legal loved it. Said it humanizes the story without being exploitative. Shows disability is part of your identity, not the whole story. Plus, you look like a total badass, which doesn't hurt. "I am a total badass," I said. "Sure, David, whatever helps you sleep at night." Thursday, I had a particularly brutal physical therapy session. Dr. Evans had me doing gait training, basically relearning how to walk with proper form instead of the awkward stumble I'd been managing. It was exhausting, frustrating, and exactly what I needed to channel my nervous energy. "You're distracted today," Dr. Evans observed as I worked my way down the parallel bars for the 15th time. "Big week coming up," I said, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. Left foot, shift weight, right foot, shift weight. Simple in theory, incredibly difficult in practice when your nervous system is still rebooting. Work-related? You could say that. More like life-related. Career, public perception, petty revenge, the usual. She laughed. "Well, whatever it is, use it. You just walked 20 feet without stopping. That's a new record. 20 feet? A month ago, I couldn't feel my legs. 2 weeks ago, I could barely manage 5 feet. Now, 20.
Progress powered by spite and the knowledge that Sarah's comfortable little world was about to get very uncomfortable. Friday evening, Linda texted, "Sarah's having people over tomorrow. Saw her at the store buying wine, lots of wine. Think it's another celebration." "Who knows?" I texted back. "Maybe they're celebrating my successful recovery at my special facility. Can't wait to see her face on Sunday. I'm setting alarms. This is better than the Super Bowl." Saturday, I did something I hadn't done since the accident. I bought new clothes. Real clothes, not just the athletic wear I'd been living in for physical therapy. I called a personal shopper, yes, that's a thing, yes, I used one, and had them bring options to my apartment. Suits that looked good sitting down, shirts that didn't bunch weirdly, pants that actually fit over leg braces, shoes I could slip on without help. "You're preparing for something big," the shopper, whose name was Chloe, observed as I tried on the third suit jacket. "Press appearance Monday," I said. "National TV. Need to look the part." "Well, you're going to look incredible. This charcoal gray is perfect with your complexion. Makes your eyes pop. Very, I'm successful and I know it." That's exactly the vibe I'm going for. I bought 3 suits, 2 pairs of shoes, and enough dress shirts to outfit a small boardroom. Chloe promised everything would be altered and delivered by Sunday afternoon. Plenty of time for Monday's appearance. I felt like a superhero suiting up for the final battle, except my superpower was capitalism and my weapon was public relations. Saturday night, I barely slept. Not from nerves, I was way past nervous. I was in that weird calm zone that comes after you've planned something so thoroughly that there's nothing left to do but execute. I spent the evening on my balcony, watching the city lights, thinking about how different my life looked now compared to 3 months ago. Then, married, injured, scared, dependent. Now, single, recovering, wealthy, independent. Funny how getting thrown out was the best thing that could have happened to me. Sunday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., even though my alarm wasn't set until 7. Couldn't help it. Today was the day. I made coffee, fancy stuff, the kind that costs more per pound than my old weekly grocery budget, and sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop, waiting. 7:45 a.m. Janet texted, "15 minutes, you ready?" "Been ready," I texted back. 7:58 a.m. Press release is loaded, going live in 2 minutes. I opened Twitter on my laptop, opened LinkedIn, opened my email. My phone sat next to me, silenced but visible. I wanted to see it all unfold in real time. 8 a.m. The press release went live. It was beautiful, professionally written, perfectly formatted, with that photo of me looking like I own the world. The headline read, "David Miller, named Director of Safety Innovation at Titan Shield Industries following successful acquisition of Secure Fall Technologies." The first paragraph laid out the basics, the acquisition, the $8.5 million deal, my new role. The second paragraph talked about my background, my credentials, the safety equipment I designed. The third paragraph, this was Janet's genius, addressed the accident directly. Miller's commitment to safety innovation was reinforced by a personal experience in March when he was injured while personally testing equipment at a construction site. "Sometimes the best insights come from the hardest moments," Miller stated. "My injury gave me a deeper understanding of the real-world challenges our clients face. I'm more committed than ever to creating safety solutions that actually work." The fourth paragraph mentioned my recovery, my continued work during rehabilitation, and my excitement about the new role. The fifth paragraph had quotes from the Titan Shield CEO about how valuable I was, how innovative my work had been, how excited they were to have me on the team. And at the bottom, in smaller text, Miller will be appearing on Good Morning America Monday to discuss the acquisition and the future of workplace safety innovation. It was perfect. Inspirational without being sappy, professional without being boring, and most importantly, it made me look like exactly what I was, successful, capable, and very much not someone who needed to be thrown away. I watched the press release hit the newswires. Within minutes, it was on Business Insider, then Bloomberg, then Forbes. Tech news sites picked it up because of the acquisition amount. Safety industry publications picked it up because it was relevant to their audience. LinkedIn exploded with shares and comments. 8:15 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Texts from former colleagues, "Congratulations, this is amazing, why didn't you tell us?" 8:23 a.m., an email from an old college friend. "Dude, you're on Bloomberg, when did you become a big deal?" 8:31 a.m., Linda texted, all caps, "I just saw the press release, I'm screaming, this is glorious, does Sarah know yet?" "Not yet," I texted back, "but she will soon." 8:47 a.m., the first connection request on LinkedIn from someone at Titan Shield I didn't know. Then another, then 5 more. People were finding me, connecting, congratulating. The notifications were coming in faster than I could read them. 9:03 a.m., Janet called. "David, it's blowing up. We've had 3 interview requests already. 2 podcasts and a local news station want you for segments. This is bigger than we expected." "How much bigger?"
The hashtag burden no more is starting to trend on Twitter. Someone made a meme using your photo with the caption, "Wheelchair? More like wheelchair man." It's got like 50,000 likes already. I pulled up Twitter. Sure enough, hashtag burden no more was climbing. People were sharing the press release with comments about disability representation, about not underestimating people, about how inspiring it was. Someone had made a whole thread about workplace injuries and how companies should treat employees. Another thread was about accessibility in corporate America. It was becoming a whole thing, way beyond just my personal story. 9:28 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another unknown number. Another voicemail. I checked the first one. "Hi, Mr. Miller. This is Rebecca from the Today Show. We'd love to have you on." Delete. I had 1 media appearance scheduled, and that was enough. 9:45 a.m. Linda called. I answered. "She knows," Linda said immediately. "Sarah knows. I can see her house from my window. She's pacing in her living room. Been on her phone for the last 20 minutes. David, she looks panicked." "Good," I said, and I meant it. Mark's car just pulled up, and Kevin's truck. Emergency family meeting, probably. Even better. This is the most entertainment I've had in years. Thank you for this gift. 10:17 a.m. A text from a number I recognized. "Sarah, finally. We need to talk." I stared at those 4 words. We need to talk. The same phrase she'd used before kicking me out. The same phrase that had started this whole disaster. And now she wanted to talk? Now? When the story was out there? When the world knew? When her narrative had collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm? I didn't respond. Not yet. Let her wait. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of what I'd felt when she'd stood in our living room and called me a burden. 10:33 a.m. Another text from Sarah. "David, please, this is important." 10:41 a.m. "We had no idea about the deal. You should have told us." Should have told them. That was rich. I should have told them about my success so they could, what? Not kick me out? Treat me better? Benefit from my good fortune? The entitlement was astounding. 11:02 a.m. A text from Mark. "Dude, congrats on the deal. Seriously impressive. We should celebrate." Celebrate? The same guy who'd packed my clothes into garbage bags wanted to celebrate? The cognitive dissonance was giving me whiplash. 11:15 a.m. Kevin texted. "Bro, just saw the news. That's insane. 8 million? Holy, we need to catch up." They were coming out of the woodwork now. All of them suddenly interested, suddenly congratulatory, suddenly wanting to reconnect. Where was this energy when I was sitting in my wheelchair watching them stuff my life into trash bags? Where was this enthusiasm when Sarah was calling me a burden? I left all their messages on read. Let them see I'd seen them. Let them know I was deliberately not responding. Let them stew in it. 12:47 p.m. The press release had been live for almost 5 hours, and the internet was still going wild. Hashtag burden no more had evolved beyond my story into a whole disability rights conversation. People were sharing their own stories of being underestimated, dismissed, written off. It was honestly incredible and humbling and a little overwhelming. 1:23 p.m. Another text from Sarah. David, please call me. We need to discuss this situation. Situation? She called my success a situation, like it was a problem to be managed rather than an achievement to be celebrated. That told me everything I needed to know about what she really wanted from this conversation. I finally responded, keeping it simple. I'm busy preparing for my TV appearance tomorrow. We can talk after that. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again, disappeared. She was typing and deleting, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, can we at least talk before you go on national television? No. One word. Simple, direct, final. The same energy she'd given me when she decided I needed to leave. The dots appeared again, then stopped. No response. Good. I set my phone face down on the counter and looked around my penthouse. The afternoon sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making everything look like it was glowing. My new suits were hanging in the closet, ready for tomorrow. My wheelchair was parked nearby, looking less like a medical device and more like just another piece of furniture in my life. Tomorrow, I'd go on national television. I'd tell my story, the real story, not Sarah's sanitized version, and the world would see that the guy who'd been called a burden had actually been the one carrying the weight all along. But today I was just going to sit here, watch the notifications roll in, and enjoy the fact that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guy wins, even if he has to do it from a wheelchair. Monday morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. for my 6:30 a.m. Good Morning America appearance. The GMA team had sent a car, another accessible van, because apparently that's just how I roll now, and I arrived at the studio in Midtown feeling surprisingly calm. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that after everything I'd been through, a TV interview felt like the easiest thing in the world. The green room had good coffee at least. The producer, a woman named Ashley who talked at approximately 800 words per minute, ran through the segment plan, while a makeup artist made me camera ready, which apparently meant making me look like myself, but slightly more orange. We're doing a 7-minute segment, Ashley explained. Robin will ask about the acquisition, your recovery, your new role. Keep it inspiring but authentic. America loves a comeback story, and you're basically the poster child right now. No pressure, I said. Oh, tons of pressure, but you'll be great. Just be yourself. Well, your best self, your TV self. At 6:27 a.m., I was wheeled onto the set. The lights were absurdly bright. Robin Roberts greeted me warmly, and I could tell immediately why she was good at her job. She made you feel like you were just having coffee with a friend, not talking to millions of people. The interview went exactly as planned. She asked about SecureFall, about the accident, about the irony of a safety equipment CEO being injured. I kept it light, self-deprecating. Turns out even the experts aren't immune to gravity, I said, and the studio crew laughed. Then she asked about recovery, and I saw my opening. The interesting thing about facing a setback like this, I said, looking directly at the camera, is you find out who's really in your corner. Some people see a challenge and step up. Others see a burden and step back. Sometimes being thrown away is the push you need to roll forward. Robin's eyebrows raised slightly. She knew there was a story there, but she was too professional to pry on live TV. Instead, she pivoted to Titan Shield, to innovation, to the future. We talked about workplace safety, about accessibility, about turning adversity into opportunity. The segment ended with footage from the Titan Shield facility, me touring the labs, talking with engineers, looking every bit the director of safety innovation I now was. As the camera cut away, Robin squeezed my hand. "That was perfect," she whispered. By the time I got back to my apartment at 9 a.m., #BurdenNoMore was trending nationwide. Someone had clipped my thrown away quote and turned it into what the internet calls a moment. The memes were multiplying. News outlets were picking up the story. My phone had approximately 6,000 notifications. And sitting in my voicemail was a message from Sarah. "We need to talk today, please." I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Game, set, match. That afternoon, my building's security called. "Mr. Miller, your wife and her brothers are here. Should I send them up?" I chuckled. "Send the fan club up." When my apartment door opened, Sarah's face was priceless. Her eyes swept over the marble floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the adaptive technology that made my wheelchair look like it belonged in a luxury showroom rather than a hospital. Mark and Kevin shuffled behind her, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "You could have told us about the deal," Mark said, breaking the silence. I raised an eyebrow. "Would that have stopped you from dragging my coffee maker to the driveway?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice softening into what I recognized as her manipulation mode. "We can fix this, David. Come home. We'll make the guest room accessible. We made a mistake." "A mistake?" I interrupted. "You called me a burden. You packed my life into garbage bags. You told the neighborhood I was at a special facility while throwing barbecues at my house." "Our house," she corrected automatically, then seemed to realize that wasn't helping. I gestured at the skyline behind me. "I already have an accessible home. I just upgraded from Motel Betrayal to Suite Independence Penthouse. Floor 23, if you're keeping track." Kevin was staring at my kitchen like he'd never seen granite countertops before. They left 20 minutes later, clutching a brochure for the foundation I'd started for injured workers. "Donations welcome," I'd said with a wink. Sarah's face had gone through about 17 different expressions, none of them good. As the door closed behind them, my phone buzzed. The Titan Shield CEO. Applications for our safety program were flooding in after the GFA interview. Partnerships, speaking requests, everything was exploding in the best possible way. I rolled to the balcony, looking down at Sarah and her brothers shuffling toward their car like kids who'd just been sent to the principal's office. They looked smaller from up here, less significant. Mark kept glancing back at the building like he couldn't quite process what had happened. Kevin was on his phone, probably Googling, "How much do penthouses cost?" because subtlety wasn't his strong suit. They'd thrown me out, thinking they were ridding themselves of a burden. They'd only freed me to build an empire. Sometimes being evicted is just a relocation notice from fate with a better view. I raised my coffee mug toward the window in a private toast. To new beginnings, to revenge served cold, to proving that wheelchairs don't hold you back, small-minded people do. And I was done with small-minded people. The city stretched out before me, full of possibilities. Time to roll forward.